Hey family, Joseph Baba Ifa here on the channel that is connecting you to your destiny once again, coming at you with another video about La Letra del Año 2021, Ika Ofun, or the letter of the year for the world, based on the annual divination that's done in Cuba on January 1st. So in the last video, we started this two-part video about ethics, right? So in the previous video, we talked about the foundations of the ethics within Ifa that this sign basically manifested for the first time, whether it be the 16 commandments of Ifa, the rules that the Iawo or recent initiate should live by, or even, some of the mistakes that Obadala made by not following these rules. So it was kind of a segue into this video where we're going to get more into the negative aspects that this sign unfortunately speaks of. Doesn't mean they have to happen, but it does mean that we can't avoid them because we have the information to do so. If you haven't had the opportunity, please go ahead and subscribe right below this video right now. So, Ika Ofun. We spoke about the positive aspects and the beautiful nature that Ifa's ethics has. Let's get into some of the other aspects that it talks about. This sign speaks about the misuse of the religious gifts that we're given as Babalawo, as Olorisha, as religious practitioners in general. This is not something to be used or taken lightly because these things do have consequences. When we use Ogu, or negative medicine, or brujeria, or witchcraft as it's known, or in the traditional aspect is known more as abilu, which is negative work, it can have a very real effect on somebody and can have a very real negative effect on somebody. But not only on that somebody that you may be trying to hurt or coerce, but also on yourself. Because there's odus of Ifa that say when we do witchcraft or we do negative things, we're contaminating ourselves because we're actually coming in contact with it, right? If we're creating a nuclear bomb, yep, we're going to drop that bomb on said place and hurt a lot of people, but we're coming in contact with radioactive material that could ultimately affect our health as well. So what are the different aspects of these kind of things that this sign is speaking about that are unethical, right? The first one is a concept known as amarre, right? Which literally in Spanish means to be tied to something, right? Or get tied down. And this is usually a phrase or a term used to, refer to when somebody wants to have somebody in a position that they want them to be. For example, let's say you're enamored with said person or you're infatuated with said person, and you take it upon yourself to kind of force nature and do things to force that person to be with you, or frustrate them, better said, to be with you. And what aspect of this sign speaks of this? There's actually a story where there was a gentleman, I guess you could say it's Orumela, who was enamored with a woman. And, he tried to approach the woman naturally, and the woman really wasn't interested in him. Where Ifa said that he needed to initiate himself in Ifa and then make a second attempt. And he did so, and then the woman became enamored with him based on his knowledge that he misused to create an amulet or a situation where, she would fall in love with him forcibly. So, very unethical, to say the least. But it worked, because sometimes negative things do work. And they lived together. And unfortunately, the gentleman died before her. But before he passed away, he wasn't able to undo the witchcraft where that woman lived frustrated for the rest of her, material existence on earth. What is Ifa saying here? Ifa is saying that, we have to allow nature to take place. We can be very infatuated with somebody, but we should never take away that natural process of courting and allowing somebody to respond to the feelings that we have. And if they don't respond in the same manner, hey, there's about, another 6.9 billion people on earth that might be really interested in you. So we have to allow nature to really take its course and not force things. Because when we force things, we're doing a great disservice not only to the other person, but to ourselves. Because let's say we do get that person. We're getting them in a very spiritually frustrated state where I see it time and time again. And unfortunately, people come into the Botanica looking for this service pretty frequently, where I have to politely, deny that service because we don't delve into those kind of things from an unethical standpoint. And there's nothing wrong, I want to reiterate, there's nothing wrong with you doing things spiritually to bring love to your life. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes it's even necessary. And Ifa states that you might need a cleaning, or you might need to do an offering to said Orisha, so that romantically things can evolve a little bit more for you. But we're never actually doing things to force one said person to be bound to you or to fall in love with you, right? Because once again, unethical. We're playing God at that point. And the one thing that this sign is saying is the Olorisha and the Babalawo is not God. So we are instruments for the Orishas and their will. We offer to them to facilitate facilitate what it is that they already want so that we get it sooner. But if we're not meant to have it, don't do things that you think are going to make you have it, because they're just going to frustrate you. Because you may get that partner, but they may be very toxic for you when you get them, and then this frustration causes you to stay with them because you're so infatuated, not realizing that they're not really compatible, whether physically or spiritually, right? So it speaks of that, because in this sign, the gentleman, or the alawo, or the person who was going to become a babalawo, really did Ifa for all the wrong reasons, where Ifa is saying in Ika Ofun that a lot of people could possibly be getting, initiated for the wrong reasons. Ifa is a philosophy. It's a code of conduct. It's something that we utilize to better ourselves as human beings. It's not for material goods. It's not for romantic, attributes or benefits. Ifa does help align you to find that partner, but that doesn't mean that every person you're interested in is somebody that really needs to reciprocate. So I think it's really important when people are getting involved in this faith, whether it be palo, whether they're receiving manorula, any of these things, that we don't have power. The power that we have is to interact with these deities and appease them and accept whatever it is that they give us. Nothing more, nothing less. So I think a big issue that's occurring nowadays is that these prospects are not being exposed to Ifa correctly or coherently to see what Ifa really is. A lot of people come into this thinking it's magic, or thinking that it's a license to do whatever you want, and Ifa is saying here this was the wrong path, because the babalawo utilized his consecration, or the olorisha, or anybody, this could even be a client, utilized said information or said practice to tie somebody to them and ultimately frustrate them, because when they passed away, they didn't even have the opportunity to take the negativity off of them. So when they weren't there, the negativity persisted, and the person led an unfulfilled life here on earth, which is very sad, right? So it speaks of the unethical, right, within this sign, which is the opposite of what the sign really wants to show, which is the commandments of Ifa, where this said practice is a taboo. So Ifa is saying, if you're a spiritual professional, you want to avoid these kind of practices this year, and in general, if you're a client or somebody that's getting closer to the faith, avoid doing these things, or avoid getting initiated to, kind of have this situation where you feel like everything is going to be yours. Because to be frank with you, Ifa is a very difficult path. It's a beautiful path. It's very gratifying, but don't think that you're just going to get initiated and everything's going to go wonderfully for you, because usually that couldn't be farther from the truth, right? You go through a lot of hardships. Orumila has a way of really putting you in uncomfortable positions to make you grow. So if you're not ready to go through that, really reevaluate whether you want to get involved in this. And that's what Ifa is saying. Let's involve people that are prepared for what is to come, what Ifa expects of them, so that they don't go through these hard situations where nature doesn't go their way, and then they go through hardships that they weren't really prepared for, or weren't even willing to go through to be able to get that blessing. So let's educate these people before we get them involved, right? So no amarres, let's avoid that. It also speaks of another situation or story in Ika Ofun, where Orumila did witchcraft to force a woman once again to be with him. Another example of an amarre, right? Or to tie somebody to you, or to force somebody to you without them actually wanting to be there, or not even realizing that they want to be there. Sometimes you are meant to be with that person, but you can actually do more harm than good, because by doing this witchcraft, you've actually distanced them from you, or you've brought them in a frustrated state to where destiny can't even play out. And we only get one chance here on earth, so we want to make sure that we're doing things correctly and allowing the orishas and nature to move the way it's meant to. How do we do this? By performing ebbo. When we perform ebbo, we remove any negativities, we realign ourselves with our destiny, we make offerings to nature so that the world moves the way we'd like it to, or the way that is best for us. Because the orishas may not always give us what we want, but they always give us what's best for us. And that's what ebbo is for. And it has no negative repercussions. You're not frustrating anybody. Whatever is marked by the oracle ethically, right, within the guidelines of the commandments of Ifa, do that. Don't even blink. Don't even think twice about it. It's positive. Whatever's meant to happen is going to happen. Now, once again, you could say, well, why do ebbo if things can't go the way that I want them to go, or that they should go? Because, if you don't do ebbo, you're guaranteeing that things aren't going to go the way you want them to, or that they could go. But at least if you do it, if there is that gray area that you've fallen out of balance with because of your decisions and actions, probably because you're looking for amarres anyway, we can avoid that loss and actually fulfill you and lead to a very gratifying situation. So do ebbo. Do your annual reading. Find out what Orumila has in store for you, because Ika Ofun is the letter of the year for the world. It's symbolic in that regard of situations that could be going on a global aspect. But when you want to know what's specifically going to happen for you, you need to reveal Ori and identify what's going on by doing your annual reading with your Babalawo or your professional, right? You want to know what's coming this year, because it's going to be a very critical year. We're trying to recover from a a global emergency. So, it's always good to know what's going on, right? So we spoke about that situation, and Orumila, he made some unethical decisions there. He got what he wanted, but he lived frustrated, because it doesn't say that in the pataki, but when you're interpreting Ifa, which is one of the favorite things I love to do, you have to go a little bit beyond the pataki, and you have to think about Orumila being with this woman for the rest of his life and having to live with the idea that, I'm only with her because of the spiritual work I did. That's not a gratifying existence for any human being. It's not good for self-esteem. It's not good for your mental hygiene. These are not the things that we get initiated for, right? These are the things we want to avoid. So it speaks of that, and unfortunately, if this sign is coming out, Ifa says these kind of things may be happening. And we need to avoid that, because it's lowering the prestige of our faith, right? Orumila was a babalawo. For him to indulge in such conduct, it doesn't make our position or any of the positions within Orisha look well. So it speaks of that. And it speaks a lot of things going on that might not be visible, that are spiritually apparent, that you'd only know if you get read. So please keep up with your spiritual hygiene this year. Make sure that no one's doing anything to you out of the ordinary, so that you can have the best year possible, right? There's another story in this sign where it speaks of the Orisha Osain, right? And Osain was a very temperamental deity within the mythology of Ifa, and not to delve into the specifics of the story, Osain was basically doing witchcraft to everybody, because he felt like people weren't attending to him or weren't giving him his just due as far as time and attention. And because of it, he just started basically doing witchcraft to everybody, because he was bored and he felt like he deserved said courtesies. When, just because someone doesn't say hello to you, or someone doesn't give you the proper, greeting within this faith, or just in general, that doesn't mean that we have to go to the extreme of trying to hurt them. It could be a misunderstanding. It could be that that person's not having a good day. We have to cognitively understand and interpret information and give people the benefit of the doubt, so we can avoid religious warfare, and just conflicts and gossip in general, because Ifa's saying this may be plaguing our community, where we're constantly talking bad about each other, or we're doing things to hurt each other from a spiritual standpoint. None of this is productive, and it's bringing down the faith as a whole, where even the people who aren't involved, you have to deal with it, because sometimes you have to interact with people that are involved, and this stuff is contagious. It speaks of the epidemics, right? So it speaks of that. These are the things we want to avoid. Don't take things personally. Sometimes things can just be resolved with a nice conversation and just making your sentiments felt, and then we don't have any issues, and then we don't have to do witchcraft to each other. Everybody can be healthy and things can go well. That's what Ifa is saying here that we need to do. So it speaks of that. Unfortunately, this sign also speaks of jealousy. Ifa in the Odu Eyobe says that you will have within Ifa whatever Olodumare sees fit that you deserve, based on your sacrifice, merits, abilities, and dedication. So if you are a spiritual professional right now and you have one client, that's what you're meant to have right now. It's not by chance, because in the Odu Ireteyero or Iretenjeru or Atepa Iwori, it says that whatever comes to the house of the spiritual professional is Orumila who brought them there. So you might not be somebody who's meant to have a huge clientele base. You might be somebody that's meant to have an extraordinarily huge clientele base. Just because you don't have the huge clientele base right now doesn't mean you won't have it later. But everything is patience and good conduct and dedication and study and practice and good energy. And these things come, and they come in various forms. You might not have 1,000 ihados, but you might have a wonderful profession. Or you might, dedicate yourself to other aspects of the faith where you're a beast when it comes to like directing ceremony, or you're amazing at said thing, or you're someone who's very good at opening. It can be any of these things, but everybody has a role to play. When we focus on other people's blessings, we miss our own. So if you're not doing something right now, it doesn't mean you're not going to do it, or it might be that that's not meant for you, but something better is coming based on your destiny. And that's really key. And it speaks of jealousy in this sign, because in this sign, it speaks of two sisters, Oshun and Yemaya. And Yemaya was very jealous of Oshun because she had beautiful hair, and Yemaya's hair was a little rougher, let's say. And Yemaya was so jealous of Oshun that she cut her hair off, and Oshun became very depressed. And the way the Pataki the way the Pataki ultimately finishes, someone helps her to create a wig, Ifa of the wigs, right? And she was able to kind of restore her happiness, but she was still affected by the negativity her own sister did to her, right? So when we interpret Ifa, Oshun was a good person. She never bothered anybody. She was just living her life. And then Yemaya, who felt that, Oshun was, more aesthetic than her, felt the need to try to tarnish Oshun, not realizing that maybe there was somebody that was very interested in Yemaya and the way she looked, but being that she was so focused trying to destroy Oshun, that guy or whatever partner was like, you're not even paying attention to me. I'm going to keep it moving. And, she ultimately destroyed herself on both ends because she lost a partner, she lost a sister, all of these things. And Ifa's saying if this sign is coming out, envy cannot be something that exists in Ifa. It cannot be something that we allow to materialize within Ifa, because everybody's meant for something different. If Oshun was meant to have said hair, God bless her, but she may have said problem that you don't have, which is a virtue for you. The existence is a balance. Everybody has problems. Everybody has, virtues and weaknesses, and we all have to learn how to live with either. The few positive things that we may have about ourselves, for someone to envy those is really sad because you don't know the other problems that person may be going through. If you think about Oshun in this story, maybe it was the manifestation where her children just got taken away from her. Maybe it was the manifestation where she was extremely poor. All of these said problems, but Yemayan, outsider looking in, said, wow, her life is amazing because of her hair, where it speaks of jealousy, and all these different things. So it could be religious jealousy, it could be social jealousy. Fa says we can't focus so much on the material and the aesthetic. We have to focus on the substance of the human being and the pedigree of their soul, really building long-lasting, thorough relationships with the person rather than what they represent, right? So you could be playing the role of Ochun this year, someone that's being a victim, right? Because it speaks of victimization. Whether we go back all the way to the beginning of the unmasking of Iku, or in the last story where it spoke of where Obadala took advantage of his godchildren, in this sign, it speaks of various situations where people were victims, right? Ifa says we do not utilize Ifa to hurt other people. We have a pact and an oath to help save humanity. So we cannot dedicate our time to hurting our fellow man for economic gain, for ego. We have too many other things we have to do, and within this situation of pandemic, this is not the moment to be focusing on things like this, whether it be witchcraft pertaining to love, destruction, hurting other people, or just jealousy because we're bored. Because usually if you're doing constructive things with your life, you don't have time to do witchcraft because you probably have a schedule like everybody else where you have 100 things to do. So rather than focusing on other people and possibly derailing them, let's focus on what it is that you want to accomplish in life. Let's do some introspection and say, hey, this is my 2021. It just started. The year is still mine. I'm going to do this. And I'm not going to allow any false ideas in my mind to make me focus on other people or hurting other people rather than me focusing on my goals and really putting the time to get there so I can be somebody that's fulfilled, right? So it speaks of that. So that's the other aspect of the ethics that this sign speaks of. We touched on the positive and how to avoid it. We touched on the negative and how to avoid it. And Ifa's saying this year, we got to get back to basics. We need to treat each other well. We need to focus on growth. We need to focus on study. We need to focus on conduct. And if we do that, we won't have time for these other things that really derailed this sign and earth and the spirituality that accompanies it. Ifa, when we're talking about a sign, it talks about the positive and negative aspects. So on one half of this sign, you have the 16 commandments that brought virtue. On the other aspect, you speak about the lower ego and the things that it wants to accomplish and the lower self and us being able to overcome it and avoid it. Because if we go with the first path, the other things that we wanted in this path are surely guaranteed without the negative spiritual jet lag. So that's really key. Ifa wants us to have all the benefits with, any spiritual jet lag so we can actually appreciate it. Because if we achieve our goals through nefarious means, we're not really going to enjoy it, because deep down inside, everybody has a conscience, and no matter how nullified it may have become through constantly doing things like this, there's always that ounce of this isn't right. So Ifa says, have a good conscience, have a good moral conduct and hygiene, and this year is going to go wonderfully. For all of those who are living the positive aspect of this sign in the world, please protect yourself, do your annual reading, do your ebbo, wear your religious items, stay up to date with your spiritual habits, so that for those who haven't seen the light yet or matured, protect yourself from them and their goals, and pray for them and hope that they see the light and dedicate all those wonderful talents that they do have that they're not realizing could be applied to positive things, right? Which is what Ika Ofun is talking about. So guys, another video on ethics, another video on the Letra del Año, or the letter of the year, Ika Ofun. And we're going to be coming out with another video on this Odu, talking about, the power of Ori within this Odu and the power of self-sacrifice to be able to achieve things. So definitely be on the lookout for it. If you haven't had the opportunity, be sure to subscribe. If you can, like, share, comment. Botanica Candles and More appreciates you. Joseph Baba Ifa appreciates you. And from the channel, connecting you to your destiny, Iboru Iboye Bochiche. Take care, family. Blessings.